For over 40 years, Ability360, originally known as ABLE, has served people with disabilities in our community, providing programs and services to continue our mission of promoting a lifestyle of independence. Everything from advocacy and our ongoing protection and support of disability rights, to home care services, independent living resources, and so much more. As well as our sports and fitness center, which has offered a variety of adaptive workouts and athletic teams for those with disabilities. But the Center for Independent Living didn't just spring up in the Valley overnight. Join us as we sit with many of the figures who helped shape Ability360 into what it is today, as we reflect on the last 40 years of serving the disability community.
My name is Susan Webb, and I started out as a board member of ABLE back in the day. You know, over the years, ABLE has maintained its focus on advocacy, and not necessarily in that order. We've always been focused on nothing about us without us, that about consumer choice, control, and inclusion. And over the years, those have been our guiding principles, and that has never, ever changed. No matter who's in the driver's seat, no matter who's on the board. Independent living centers, or centers for independent living, were really woven into the independent living movement. It's what established centers for independent living. The Rehab Act, which was 1973, definitely wrote into legislation that we should exist. And consequently, that was really unique, because that was the first time, as I know, that we had organizations directed by and mandated to be in existence to do advocacy on behalf of people with disabilities. That was really unusual. Before then, it was always everybody else kind of dictating how we lived our lives, and now it was our turn to dictate how we live our own lives. And really, ABLE has never been about dictating lives to anybody. It's always been about, what do you want to do and how can we help you achieve that? That is so core at who we are. Again, when ABLE was new and young, all of these things were coming together, and it was very small, and there were only a few of us doing it, but nonetheless, we continued to develop programs that were all about inclusion and making sure that all these new opportunities that we had because of the ADA and other things that came after it, that we were right at the forefront all the way along with what? Advocacy, and not necessarily in that order.
Hi, I'm Tricia Serlin. I'm Information and Referral Program Coordinator. I started at ABLE when ABLE was ABLE, before Ability360, in 1984. Much smaller. We had 8 staff, 32nd Street and Roosevelt. We were very grassroots. It actually was like a family, and we worked hard and we played hard, and we did anything and everything. These were the days of Bob Michaels.
Throughout the 80s and early 90s, the executive director of ABLE was Bob Michaels. Despite not having a disability of his own, Michaels was a strong advocate of disability rights and reform, serving ABLE throughout landmark events such as the signing of the Americans with Disability Act in 1990, also known as the ADA, a monumental bill that enacted accessibility guidelines and protections for those with disabilities against discrimination. Later in life, Bob Michaels would develop a disability of his own, continuing to advocate for an independent lifestyle for those within the disability community.
Well, Bob was very unique in as much as he does come from the social work background, and he did not have a disability of his own at the time. And so it was kind of atypical for someone like him to leave being a social worker at the state to come out into essentially the private nonprofit sector as an advocate, when in fact he didn't kind of fit that mold. But for some reason, Bob really got it. And Bob was definitely adamant about that, and making sure that if anyone ever tried to suggest that he should speak on behalf of anyone with a disability, he would absolutely shun that idea and say absolutely not, because he knew that that was not his place.
He definitely was that kind of crusader who said, get involved, think out of the box, go and do. And the great story about Department of Transportation, that came down because they were down meeting at the Hyatt in downtown Phoenix. And if you were a chair user, wheelchair user, or had mobility issues, you could certainly pay taxes, but you could not board a bus. There were no lifts. You could go to a bus and just look at it and not get on. So Bob is out there leading the march from the Washington and 12th Street facility, the new one after 32nd and Roosevelt, right down there to the Hyatt with picket signs and everything. That was Bob. He's the leader. He's do it. He's get out there. He nicely would get in people's face, but he didn't back down. And he encouraged staff to be out there. He was very kind of gentle and quiet, but he was right there and so bright. Great grants. He just wanted to see us expand and be everything an independent living center could be.
From then, when Bob Michaels decided to move to Philadelphia, I applied for and became the executive director, and did that from 1991 until about 2000, I think it was.
Something that made our center different than other centers and why our center grew so well was because we had leaders that had business backgrounds. Susan had a marketing background. She was a businesswoman. She was not in a typical disability job at that time. And she had been involved actually getting the rules developed for the ADA. She was on the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Board, I can still say that went all over the country doing hearings before the ADA to help create the rules for the ADA. That's what made all the leaders of this agency the same, was they had dignity and they had a strong belief in the dignity of people with disabilities.
Susan Webb, I give her so much credit because she is a visionary. She's always been a visionary. And so she saw this big picture where we needed to really work at getting people out of nursing homes that were needlessly placed there, introducing folks to independent living and working with the youth. So that vision that she had helped to bring about tremendous growth and be the leader that we have been for years and years, and it continues today.
When I came into it from a business background, and I was pretty businesslike. I wasn't a bleeding heart about anything or anybody. I absolutely lived the independent living philosophy and insisted everybody else did too, and figured if I could do it, so could you. The budget was about $650,000, that was it, and we were about $140,000 short. So I had to come in and really beat the bushes for money. That's what I had to do. That was the first order of business for me. And so that meant I had to go out and find grants and contracts and programs to expand, but it wasn't about chasing money just to get money. And that's another thing about ABLE that I know I tried to maintain, and I know Phil has as well, that we're always true to our mission. We're always true to raising the money we need to do what we need to do.